I'm Germaine Miller-Summers. I am the host of Hope of Vision Connect, and I am excited about this show today that we are bringing to you. It is really an extension of coming out of 50 years of celebrating hip hop music. I have a pioneer with us in the studio today, and he is someone that most people know, but a lot of you may not know, because he's always operated behind the scenes. He was the one that was making the deals happen for those artists that you know and love today. He has been on the Billboard top music entertainment attorneys for the past 3-4 years. He is also, you know what, if I tell it, and see, by me talking about it, I'm going to give it away. And I really want you to hear his story. But the reason he is in our studio today is because I, as a publisher, I have the privilege of publishing his story. And so, without further ado, I would like to introduce and bring on my guest, Mr. Ron Sweeney.
Germaine, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It's so good to see you. So I've just been sharing, with the listening audience that my special guest today is a pioneer in this entertainment industry. People may know you, but then there are people that really don't know you, and you have the opportunity to tell and share your story. They think they know you, right? But they don't really know you. And so we are here because you have partnered with me to publish your book. And I am so excited because what people may not know, you have functioned and operated in this entertainment industry for over 40 years.
That's
40
right.
years, and you have transcended through time when it comes to music. And you'll have an opportunity to share your story today with all the artists that you have been an integral part of their lives, helping them to be who they are today. And so, without further ado, I want to really bring you on, and I want to ask you the question, because I know this is a challenge for you as well as myself. Stepping from the background into the forefront, you've decided to tell your story and put it in a book. So let's talk a little bit about A Moment in Time.
Okay.
So A Moment in Time is your first, it's the book that's really journaling your story, your life story. So it starts from this little boy in South Central California. Tell me a little bit about this little boy from South Central California.
So it's South Central LA.
Thank you for the correction.
It's the part of Los Angeles where all the blacks lived. We lived in a bubble. It's the part where, if you go back in history, is where Reginald Denny was pulled out of his truck and they were burning everywhere around there. That was my neighborhood. And my paper route, the street that they pulled him off of, Florence Avenue. So and then we had Central Avenue, and that was where, all of the black nightclubs and what have you, that was all that entertainment area. And that was frequented by the blacks, but nobody went outside that area, this area,
Okay.
Nobody ventured out.
So growing up in this neighborhood in South Central LA, you have ascended to levels in this music industry that only one can imagine. But as this little boy, tell me, did you even see the music industry in your view? Tell me a little bit about this little boy.
Growing up, all I knew about anything was what I saw on TV or my neighborhood. And what I saw on TV, we didn't see us. I saw, white people doing things, and one of the shows that stuck out to me was Perry Mason. I liked Perry Mason.
Love him.
As a little kid, I gave thought to being a lawyer. But it was a fleeting thought. It wasn't anything sketched in my mind. And, I took up the drums at an early age. And once I took up those drums, all I wanted to do was be a musician. I drummed night and day. I used to drive my neighbors crazy from playing the drums, but that made me happy. That was my escape from all the other craziness in the neighborhood and my family issues. And to this day, people from high school still don't believe that I became a lawyer as opposed to a drummer. Their vision of me is seeing me in the Ronald Sweeney experience with an outfit my mother made for me, crushed velvet pants and a crushed velvet cape and no shirt on, playing Jimi Hendrix songs. My band was called the Ron Sweeney Experience. Ronald Sweeney Experience. That's what I wanted to do. Being a lawyer was not on my mind.
That's interesting.
Yes.
So you have to tell us the story or connect the dots for drummer, lawyer. What happened in between to get you to that space?
My mother and then girlfriend conspired against me.
Okay.
I met my wife in the 8th grade, and she became very, very close to my mother. And my mother wanted me to go to school, and I was out in the middle of the night drumming at sessions and what have you. I didn't realize it because, when you're doing what you're doing, I didn't realize how prolific I was as a drummer until a friend of mine, Henry Garner, the drummer of Rolls Royce, who I helped teach how to play drums. He's the one reminding me that I was probably the number 2 or 3 best drummer in LA at the time. And all I know is I was just drumming and having a good time. But I was also out all night and coming in and, in the morning and sleeping all day. My mother came in one day at 2:00 and said, "You got 3 choices: get a job, go to school, or get out." So I pulled out the yellow pages that, way back then we didn't have Google. And I ended up calling schools to see who was still accepting applications. So I had graduated in June. The fall semester had already started. And again, I didn't apply because I had no intentions. I was going to be a jazz drummer. Mm-hmm. So Cal State Northridge was still accepting applications in October that year. So I ended up, my mother always stayed on me. So I made it a point to keep my grades up. So I got accepted to Cal State Northridge. And a friend of my mother's son worked for the Internal Revenue. And of course, I'm an affirmative action baby, but for affirmative action, I wouldn't have gone to college because I couldn't afford it. Mm-hmm. But also I didn't get enough money to survive. So I had to work, and, I worked all my life. So my mother's friend's son worked for the Internal Revenue. So he got me as an intern, because he was in college too. So he got me in the program. So I became a student tax auditor. Mm. And as such, I was basically auditing their tax returns. So, because of, I was always good with numbers. And so the Internal Revenue recognized that. So they started having me, audit high net worth individuals. Now, you can imagine a kid from South Central LA looking at a tax return. Somebody made $2 million, and I go look to see what their title is, and I have no idea what that job is, what they did for a living, because I had never heard of it, because you never hear about these kind of things in the hood.
That's true.
So anyway, to make a long story short, the drum machine came along, and people started, producers in the studio wanted to use the drum machine instead of live drummers. And so I eventually realized that I needed to get serious, and I had been working for the Internal Revenue. So my idea was that I was going to go to law school and become a tax attorney. Okay. Because, in the government, they had this GS5, GS12, the kind of thing. And I looked at the GS12, and I could make $144,000 if I reached a G12. And that was my world,
Okay.
That's what I wanted to do. So anyway, knowing I was serious about law school, I transferred over to UCLA. And, the whole time I was there, it's funny, people ask, what was it like at UCLA? Well, I went to class at UCLA, and I went to work. Because the Internal Revenue offices were, maybe a mile away from the school. So in between classes, I'd go to work. And so, I was working a number of hours. So I never got a chance to really participate on campus as a student and enjoy that social life.
Okay.
And what I also did, I ended up taking classes at night when I figured out, I hated school. So I wanted to figure out how to get it done quickly. And I figured out that I could take the general ed classes at a community college, not have to pay for it. So I was going to school during the day, working during the day, and in the evening I would go to community college and take classes and so I ended up graduating from graduating from undergrad 6 months early. So
Okay.
I ended up moving home for the first time, back home, and I
Mm-hmm.
stayed there to save money to be able to. And then school started in that August, the end of August, and that's when I started law school.
So I'm going to go back just a little bit from your story. So, drummer, and see, this is the thing people don't realize. They don't realize that our journey is so important, and it's all the stops along the way that help you become who you are today, right?
Right.
So, you as a child, and how old were you as, this child, enthusiastic, excited about drumming? It all started around what age?
10, 11.
10 or 11?
10 or 11. I had to, I was the man of the house. My father, my mother and father divorced when I was 3rd. I had no relationship with him. And I almost became my mother's husband in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I was out having to earn money to help the household.
Taking on the
So,
responsibilities. Yeah.
yeah. So, when I decided I wanted to be a drummer and go past the pads and buy a drum set, I cut grass, I threw papers, I collected bottles. I did everything I could because I was a hustler. I found
Mm-hmm.
that money to buy that drum set, and I bought that drum set. And from there, the rest is history.
Okay. But it's painting a picture. And the more we get into your story, those that are listening or watching, they'll be able to understand why you are so instrumental in this music industry, because all this played a part in it. And so, with that, I want to just talk a little bit about who gave you your wings. And I say that from a standpoint, there's always someone in our life that really helps to give us our wings to fly, to encourage, to push us. To who's that person for you?
My mother. My mother um, would tell me things, to help me navigate in the world. She would tell me, follow your heart. You know, she said, don't trust white people and don't trust black people. Pay attention to what they do, not what they say. Um, it was just a lot of things that she told me. She told me I could do anything I wanted to do. And and it was coming true because every time I put my mind to go do something, she said, if you put your mind to it, you can make it happen. And every time I
Mm,
did, it happened. And I was fearless because I was naive, because I didn't
mm,
have a male figure around me telling me what I can't do, or don't do that, or don't, I just didn't have that. My mother was telling me, you can do whatever you want to do. And that's what I did. I didn't, it's crazy. I didn't really experience racism from white people where I felt it until I got to law school. And so, when I went off, let's go back. When I decided to be a drummer, I started taking drum lessons in Hollywood, which meant I had to leave the hood. And I got an eye opener to see how people really live as I'm riding through Hancock Park to get to Hollywood to my drum lessons. And it stuck in my mind. It was like looking at what you could possibly achieve. And, again, um, I wanted out of the hood. Everybody, all the people in my law school, the black people were saying this crap about, yeah, we're gonna move back to the hood and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, I can tell you never lived in the hood. If you lived in the hood, that's the last place you would want to go live.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know, for those that's watching or listening that don't know, what is Hancock Park? You mentioned that.
Hancock's Park, their CCNRs, you know, this is like the covenants and restrictions,
Mm-hmm.
says no Negroes or Jews allowed. It was where the, you know, the people who own like the Times, the people, the big white people downtown, that's where they lived. Howard Hughes lived there. So you had these stately manors with lots of yard and, you know, and just pristine, you know, manicured the whole 9 yards. And, you know, where I live, you could damn near reach out the window and touch the other house. So it was an eye opener for me as a kid because I had never seen anything like that.
But how did that impact you moving forward into your future, being able to, as a child, see this new world outside of your own?
You know, it showed me what was possible. I never said I'm black, I could never do this. It just showed me what I could do. So it's like watching somebody be successful. I'm not jealous of them. I'm like, great, it lets me know it's possible.
Definitely.
And so it showed me the possibilities, you know, and as luck would have it, I did live there, bought a house there and lived there for a number of years.
Okay, so we definitely going to get into that story because as a child between the ages of 10 and 12, you are open to this whole new world outside of your world. And then you tell us you did live there. So there's a lot more to this journey that will put you in that area based on what you just described.
Yeah.
So you go to UCLA, you get into UCLA. Now you said this was a whole setup. You know, you had 3 options that your mother gave you. And the second one was to either go to school. So you're in UCLA and you mentioned that was your first experience with racism. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you know, actually, I was saying the racism I really felt at USC Law School, not UCLA.
Okay. I'm
You
gonna
know,
get this right. I'm gonna get this right.
okay. So you know, the significance of UCLA is, you know, I had a play big brother who I'm extremely close to this day. His name is Brian Milan. He lived 2 doors from me, and when my mother died, his mother became like my mother.
Mhm.
And we remained close until she died year before last. She was 92, but sharp as a tack. And so anyway, her son Brian was a go-getter. He was at UCLA. He got an MBA. You know, he was driving a Porsche in the neighborhood before. You know, it was just unheard of, right? And he was a karate guy, a black belt, and you couldn't walk past his house without him messing with you, you know, and what have you. And so we all looked up to him. So one day he asked me to go somewhere with him, and it turned out he took me to the Kappa House, and they were forming a pledge line that day, and I guess he decided I needed to pledge, and so I ended up pledging. And I ended up being made. You know, I started with about 18 guys, and we ended up with 4 crossing, but it was like we were all from different lines, so I didn't really know them because
Okay.
they put all the lines together. So as a consequence, I never had a real strong relationship with them throughout my life.
Okay.
But the significance of the fraternity is, I met a couple of alumni people. One in particular was Bernie Hayes, and he was fascinating to me because he worked for ITT, which was a big conglomerate, international conglomerate back then. And he was like in middle management, but it required him to fly all over the world. So he was just fascinating to me because I had never been on an airplane, let alone go to another country. And so he found out, you know, that I worked for the Internal Revenue and he had some tax problems. And so, I fixed his I fixed his tax problems for him. And my other hustle that I forgot to tell you about was that I was doing tax returns on the side.
Okay.
I was making money from doing tax returns also.
Okay.
And again, I was really good at it. So people came to me. And so I became real friendly with Bernie Hayes. And when I got ready to go to law school, he was the one that found another brother to write me a letter to as a recommendation to get into USC Law School. And then there was another brother by the name of Randall Bacon who I didn't realize at the time was a very powerful political person because he was Tom Bradley's right-hand person.
Mm.
And Tom Bradley was the mayor of LA for at least 20 years, and he was a Kappa also. So within my group and that alumni chapter, there was a lot of political power in the city. And then, as luck would have it, Johnny Cochran was a member also. So, I got to know Johnny really well. When I was thinking about going to law school, he would take me to court. And that's when I learned a whole lot.
Mm.
Johnny was smooth. Johnny always had a smile on his face, and he had a swagger. And when he walked into the courtroom, everybody lit up and smiled, even the judge. Everybody loved him. And he had a way of convincing the jury and he was just magnificent watching him. And, we became close. He and my mother were the only two people in my life that ever called me Ronnie.
Mm.
And, first time I ever rode in a Rolls Royce. And it gave me a chance. I grew up poor, so I had no idea what it was like to have money and how you would live, how you could live. And, Johnny was living great and driving that Rolls Royce. And how could you not want to be a lawyer after seeing all of that? So anyway, I applied to USC Law School. And at that time, the Black students had a lot of say who would get into the school. And it just so happens the guy that interviewed me was a Kappa brother. So,
connections.
Right. And so when as an undergrad in the fraternity, Randall told me I should run for the junior vice pole mark of the fraternity. I did, and I won, and I became a member of the board of directors of the entire fraternity. So I would go to Philadelphia, to the south side of Philadelphia, fly there with Randall for our board meetings, and that's when I realized that was my first introduction to a corporation.
Mm.
That's when I realized, the fraternity was a corporation, and that was my first introduction to real business.
Through your fraternity.
Through my fraternity, yes.
Okay.
And so Randall was also the guy, they wanted me to be this, they wanted me to be that. I was the president of the alumni of the undergrad fraternity, and the alumni. I ended up being senior vice president or whatever. And I went to Randall one day and said, "Man, I can't do this. I got all this responsibility with being a lawyer and dealing with school and all of that." And he gave me the best advice in the world. Said, "Leave this alone. It'll be here. Go do what you got to do." And that's what I did.
So that phase in your life, that area of your life, you have, once again, the title of your book is called A Moment in Time. And now the more you tell your stories, I'm really understanding why the title is so befitting, because your whole introduction by someone bringing you somewhere opened you up to another moment in time for you. Exactly. That led to your next opportunities.
The individuals that at the right time helped me.
Yes. And so you get through USC, or before getting through USC.
Now we can talk about the racism.
Yes.
So let me tell you a story. I started law school at the end of August of 1975. Again, you got to remember this is at the height of affirmative action. You know, there had been the riots and what have you, and they were, you know, the government was providing grants and what have you for Black people to go to school. So I was, you know, one of the fortunate recipients. And but I also was a hustler.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, again, I graduated early, worked full time at the Internal Revenue from January until the day before I started classes at USC Law School. And since I was at home, I was saving a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So we start school, and we have we're in this torts class. This is like, you know, accidents, you know, teaching you the law and what have you. And the professor was also the dean of students in over financial aid. So the first week of class, you know, they had this famous saying in law school where the professor says, "Look to the left, look to the right. A year from now, one of you won't be there." They're instilling fear into you. And then shortly thereafter, he makes the comment that Black people don't know how to write.
Mm.
So, you know me, I raised my hand and said, "Can you explain to me how I graduated with honors from UCLA?" And this guy turned so red. And mind you, he had on a seersucker suit with white loafers. And I came to find out he was from Alabama, from the South. So I hated this guy, and I was determined to get the highest grade in the class. So I did something that I've never done again in my life. I stayed up with my friend, Peter Van Brunt, who was a student there also. We stayed up all night studying for that torts exam. Walked into the exam, and of course, they started with the writing first. I blanked. You know, it took me a moment to get myself together. And the exam was two parts. So after that, the writing part, they had the multiple choice. I got the second or the third highest grade on the multiple choice exam. I want you to know that that professor, he flunked me, which meant I was on academic probation. So I went to go see him because I thought it was unfair, because obviously I knew the class if I could get the second highest or third highest grade in the class. And so no words of encouragement.
Mm.
He must have used the word "if" 20 times in our conversation. But he did say to me, "If you make it through, you have my word, you will never have to worry about financial aid again."
Wow.
And so I kicked butt the second semester. And from there, I never had another problem with financial aid. But here's the rub. He also decided that he would not give the Black students their financial packages. We didn't get our financial aid packages, and when we started the first year in August. We didn't get the financial aid packages until January. And, you know, as a consequence, we started with 13 Blacks in the class. By the end of the first year, there were only 4 people who became my friends. And I was very angry with the school because it was clear what they did. You know, I couldn't prove it, but it was clear. I couldn't prove it then that they did it. I subsequently found out what happened, and I was correct that he did that on purpose, along with the white alumni of USC Law School who didn't want us there. So anyway, that was my first real taste of watching someone purposely try to harm me because of the color of my skin. And I looked around, I realized it wasn't only just Black people. They didn't allow very many Jewish people to come to the school either. So it was like they were discriminating against, you know, Blacks and Jews. Just like I told you about that Hancock neighborhood. It's
Yes.
no Blacks or Jews allowed. So, you know, And I was dealing with some black students, that upperclassmen, that they came from well-to-do homes, families, and the father was a doctor or whatever. And that was the first time I felt racism within our own people, because they thought they were better. And I just sort of, I was a musician, and as a musician, you don't see color because you're so into music. You see, you like music. It's like when I was in high school, I went to see Three Dog Night, Metallica, Sly Stone, James Brown, whatever the music. I love music, and so I wasn't hung up on color.
Mm-hmm.
And but when I got there, I saw it, I felt it. I was a recipient. And the thing that I had learned a long time ago about dealing with white people, I was this big black guy, my afro was probably out to here. And, when I got there and really started seeing what was what, I realized I was there to get an education. And that's all, because they weren't happy with me there. I didn't socialize with them, with the other students. While they were networking, there were students there who, their jobs were guaranteed for the summer because their families were either running the law firm or were big clients of the law firms. So, after in my first year, they all the big firms come to interview you. You could cut the air in that interview with me and these people, because they were so damn uncomfortable that it was just crazy. And that's when I came to the realization that unless I became a public defender or a prosecutor, I wasn't going to have a job. So it was really my first experience of people trying to hold you back. I never experienced that. In high school, I had a stupid guidance counselor who told me that after they did an aptitude test that I should become a printer. But I saw through her, my mother ignore her.
Exactly.
But in law school, this is about my profession. And I quickly realized the racism. So just to put it in perspective, I don't think they allowed blacks in the Los Angeles County Bar Association. That's the association for lawyers. They didn't allow black people in it. We had to create the National Black Law Association because they excluded us. And that was in the 70s. I don't think they desegregated it or whatever,
Or integrated you blacks into.
And it's still, if you go look at the membership, it's still the same way. Miles Davis said it best. He said, "Ain't nothing changed, and ain't nothing changed." You can't force people to want to be around you. You can't change, you can change the law, but you can't change somebody's heart. And so you got to always keep that in mind and figure out how to deal with racism the right way, and get rid of the emotion and do business. So I was there to get an education so I could learn how to do business and go out on my own and make money and be independent. I never wanted to sit at somebody's lunch counter because I don't want to be around somebody that don't want to be around me, And at the same time, quiet as kept, I decide who's going to be around me.
I love that term. I am always saying it's my responsibility to protect my space and who I allow into it.
Correct.
So you learn these lessons early on to be able to establish your spaces. Correct. And how you were going to operate.
So I was just this happy-go-lucky black guy, black kid who, by all accounts, very smart. They tried to kill me off. I survived. They were in awe of that. and so I survived, but I survived because I'm like, tell me the rules and don't change them. You know, just
Mm.
tell me the rules, and don't change the rules, and I'm good. And that was my philosophy.
So early on, I'm hearing you, and early on, you were already being, I don't want to use the word program, but you were already learning to be a problem solver just in real life situations.
I didn't have no choice.
Exactly. And because I always say to you, that is the one thing that really stands out when I talk to you and I hear your stories. And as you're writing your book, you are truly a problem solver. And that has followed you through your entire life in your business. And it's really probably what has solidified you in this legal business, this law business, is because you can clearly identify problems and solve them.
So that's what law school teaches you. They teach you the law, and they teach you how to spot the issues. You know, it's really it's. I went in law school thinking one way, and after the first year, I was thinking totally different. You know,
Mm,
I may complain about what the discrimination back then, but I got a first class legal education because I was at one of the best schools. And my mother always told me the one thing they can't take away from you is knowledge.
that's right.
I was determined to become the best lawyer. And, again, tell me the rules and don't change them, and I'm good. I don't have to. I don't have to be around you. I don't have to be. I'm not going to put on wingtip shoes. I'm not going to put on white, black horn glasses and talk another way. I was a musician. That's like me being totally out of my element. I had to be true to myself because that's what pure musicians do.
Well, how did you end up in the entertainment law side of the business?
So, again, the only time I didn't work was my first year of law school.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, from age 10, I've had to work. And so my first year of law school, the day after, I couldn't find a job other than with the Times Mirror Company as a proofreader for the LA Times. So I did that the summer after my first my first year. When school started, I found a job working at a small litigation firm, and they had me drafting motions, for court. So they had me in this windowless room library, and I'm sitting there all day long, and I'm like getting depressed because I'm like, this ain't what I signed up for.
Mm.
I'm not certain I want to be a lawyer because I certainly didn't want to be a litigator and deal with all of those deadlines and what have you. And so by my third year, the second semester of my third year, I was depressed because I didn't know what I was going to do. Because I came to the realization I wasn't going to be a tax attorney because you need paying clients. And all the black people I knew couldn't afford to pay me. And, the one thing I learned from my kids, because I sent them to private schools and because of their personalities, man, they got Rolodexes around the world. They know sheiks, they know all kind of people. But I made it a point to give them what I didn't have. So they were able to be in school and actually be in school, enjoy school. At one point I had them in Switzerland and boarding school, and where all the sheiks and everybody and the politicians sent their kids. So now my kids got incredible Rolodexes, but I didn't. And so I was sitting there saying, the only people I knew were black people who couldn't afford to pay me. And so what happened was the last semester of my third year started, and for lunch, they had a speaker by the name of Peter Frampton. I'm sorry, D. Anthony. And he
Okay.
was Peter Frampton's manager. Peter Frampton was a huge rock guitar guy. And so I went to hear him speak. And after he spoke, it hit me. It's almost like I found my soul. I knew I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer.
Okay.
And from there, I walked out of the the you know the him speaking, and I went ahead and called Joseph Porter, who was the lawyer that my friend Bernie Hayes had write a letter to get me into SC as a recommendation. He was a darling of the school too. So what happened was, I'm trying to reach out to him my whole law school career, never can get him on the phone. This day, when I walked out of that entertainment seminar, I called him.
Okay.
He picked up the phone. No, in between secretary, anything. He picked up the phone. I told him who I was and that I could he could get free labor and I would get credit from school. So he told me to come in that Monday.
Okay.
So I went in that Monday and he agreed. And then he subsequently, because of because of who how I work and what have you, he offered to pay me extra to work additional hours.
Mm.
So that was my introduction to how I got into the entertainment business.
Okay, so now you're working with Joseph Porter, who is an entertainment attorney, and your whole life changes. I'm going to say this is another moment in time scenario.
Yes.
Whereas it now takes you down another pathway or another journey that opens your whole world up.
Another moment in time.
Another moment in time. And it also, as you're telling this story, is going to allow us to see how you ended up in Hancock Park.
So I go to work for Joseph Porter. Any good entertainment lawyer is never in the office because you have big clients that don't come to your office. You got to go see them. So I would say the majority of the time that I worked for him, I was in the office by myself. So I consequently was answering the phones. And also because I was by myself, I went through his files and read every contract. And, oftentimes there was nothing to do. So I had time to think about the contracts, dissect them, try to figure out, based on what I had learned in law school, why would somebody do this? I call it thinking out the box, trying to understand, because I'm always trying to understand the other side, because if I understand the other side, I know how to get something done. So one of these days I get a call from a guy. He's cursing up a storm. There are things what he said, I won't even repeat because it was just foul, right? And so this guy is going on, and I'm like, and then I said, I don't know who the F this is, but I don't allow even my own mother to speak to me like this. I'm like, I'm from South Central LA. I don't play this, something along those lines. And the person said, who is this? I'm coming over there right now. So, I have no idea who's coming over. It turns out to be Clarence Avant. I still have no idea who he is, right? You didn't have Google. He was just somebody, one of Joe's clients, and he was mad at Joe. So he comes over, let's say around 3:00. He was so fascinated with me in my journey that we ended up talking until 10:00 that night.
Wow.
And that's when we formed. I didn't realize we were forming a bond.
Wow.
So I had no clue who he was, had no clue about his background. He was just Clarence Avant, and he had Taboo Records. And he hadn't started Taboo Records that long. And again, you don't have Google where you can go look up somebody's background. Bless you. So I ended up, again, he identified with me because he didn't grow up with a father. He grew up poor. He had to fit, go to work. All of my attributes it was like a mirror of his. And, you know, he found it incredible that I went to UCLA and USC Law School. It was like the best schools you could go to.
Exactly.
In LA. And I'm this black kid from South Central LA. It's just not, it's not the rule, it's the exception to the rule. So anyway, I ended up doing his work at the firm. So, you know, he signed the SOS ban. I did all of that in the negotiations, that deal. I'm still in law school. Maybe I'd already graduated. He signed Sherelle. He signed Alexander O'Neill. But what happened was I just didn't like, I'm one of these kind of guys. If I don't feel good about something, I make a change. Okay. And so I finally told Clarence, I can't take it anymore. I'm leaving the firm. So I left that employment in March of 1980, and I went out on my own. The first, and mind you, I was working for Joe Porter for either $200 a week or $300 a week. So I took a haircut to become an entertainment lawyer. And because I was a musician, you know, I knew everybody. I already knew all of the good musicians in New York, in LA. So I was bringing in business right off the start, right at the beginning. So I went out on my own in the first week, and I just took a leap of faith.
So let me interject here, because most young people are fearful with even getting into a position and then taking the leap to leave. That takes a lot of courage.
Well, not if you come from nothing. Anything above zero, you're ahead. I thought I started off at minus 20. When I got in the real world, I found out I started off at minus 20 million. Because, they tell you to keep your nose clean, work hard, and you'll get ahead. No, it's all about who you know, networking, and being able to deliver once you get in the room. But, we're not in the game. We're just not in the game because, there are people who have had generations before us that have been doing this for generations. And I was the first person to graduate from college, high school.
In your family?
Yeah. And so I was always in uncharted territory, guessing my way through life because I didn't have anybody else to tell me. I dealt with my fraternity brothers, but, I outgrew them because I went on to be a lawyer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm, and not in a negative sense. I'm just saying I get it. I need help. Give me advice. I could go to Johnny because he was a lawyer, but some of the other guys, they couldn't help me. They gave me lots of support, emotional support, but in terms of helping me navigate, they couldn't help me. And so I went out on my own, and the first week I get a call from Fred Wesley. Now, Fred Wesley was a band leader for James Brown, and he cut this song called House Party that Curtis Mayfield's label wanted to sign. So I did the deal, and I made $10,000. Now, mind you, I was working for Joe, getting paid $200-$300 a week. And I do one deal and I make $10 million. I mean, not $10,000, so it blew my mind, and the crazy part about that moment in time.
Yes.
I met Fred Wesley and his lovely wife, Gertie, because I audited their tax return.
Now, you mentioned, and I don't know if you mentioned in this, but you mentioned this is now your introduction to James Brown. James Brown, you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead now.
But you as a drummer, I know he was someone that you looked up to.
James Brown was my idol. I played hours and hours playing his songs and playing to him. It was somebody that, I'm black and I'm proud. My mother taught me to be a proud black man, not to feel inferior in any kind of way. And I was a very proud black man. And I wouldn't let anybody get into my head and tell me any otherwise. So all of the foolishness I looked at and watched, people do whatever, going through head trips. And I'm like looking at them and thinking they're crazy, because I know these people that are talking to them are crazy, because I wouldn't let them get into my head. So, James Brown, the story that I told you about James Brown was later on, when later on as my practice grew. So
this guy, Frank, you said his name was?
Fred Wesley.
Fred Wesley. Fred Wesley enters again.
Yeah, you'll hear James Brown say, "Fred, play that funky horn," And so again, he was the leader of James Brown's band. But so he came to me, and I ended up I became really good friends with him and Gertie, represented him and helped the family the whole 9 yards when it was necessary. But I ended up later on, I ended up, as my practice grew, I grew with my clients. So for instance, Klymaxx came to me at the beginning. I met Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, because their very first production was Klymaxx, and they hated me because the way I negotiated the deal. So they knew right away. Terry told me he knew right away he had to hire me. So I was with them from the very beginning. I introduced Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis to Clarence through their manager, and the marriage in heaven was created between Clarence, Jimmy Jam, and Terry Lewis, and myself. And the rest is history.
You mentioned your encounter with him and now the connection of building with him, but most people may not know the significance of who he is. Just let us know who he is represented. Well, who we call him, who we know him to be.
In the music business, he's called the Black Godfather. I became his lawyer at the age of 25.
You've been listening to Ron Sweeney talk about his journey and his story for his new book coming out, A Moment in Time. It is a must-read book about his experiences and his journey to 40 years in the music entertainment industry. The ups, the downs, the races, situations that he found himself in, but I can't do it any justice. We are making this book available for pre-order for you. So you have the opportunity to be one of the first to pre-order your copy of A Moment in Time by Ron Sweeney. And you can go to 90daybookcreation.com/A Moment in Time to pre-order your copy of this book that will be out in early spring. Do not miss out on this. If you have people that are in the entertainment industry that are looking to get in the entertainment industry and they really want to know how the inner workings are and how to be in the real music business, like I stated, this is a must-read book. You do not want to miss out on information that can be transformative and also help guide you through how to put the right team together to get the most impact for your intellectual property, for you owning your rights of what you've created. So we're excited to have him because he is a friend to Hope of Vision Connect. And like I said, make sure you pre-order your copy of his book, A Moment in Time. Stay tuned, and that information will be provided below for you. And we look forward to you subscribing to Hope of Vision Connect, and make sure you click on the notification button because you don't want to miss out for upcoming episodes. Talk to you soon, and always remember, your story is our mission. See you on the next episode.